Good morning, guys. This is Alex here from Breathing Cold, and I'm very excited to introduce this video coming up. We're going to be talking with Dr. Marc Cohen, who's my mentor. He's a medical doctor with 30 years expertise in extreme wellness, has published tons of PhDs on natural plants in Australia and all sorts of interesting studies on the range of possibilities when we go to the extreme of our physiology. So whether it's about nutrition, extreme practices, he's come up with amazing things, and his ideas will blow your mind. But here is why it is essential. In a day and age where we are looking for a direction, we're a bit lost and confused by the things we receive from the authorities, and we don't know who to believe anymore. I believe that what Dr. Marc is sharing is the answer. And I tell you why. Because all he's saying is reconnect with yourself. Because you have all the answers. As long as you rely on yourself and you take care of yourself and you know how to do that, then you will be in a position where you make the right decisions for yourself, regardless of what people say around you. So all he does is find ways to empower you with your health, create a world of well-being. And yeah, I think that's the key, and I love it all. So listen, it's just gold nuggets one after another. So just stay all the way tuned. The image is not always great. We don't always have the best connection. We don't always have his face, so I have the slides instead. But just bear with me, bear with him. It's well worth your time. All right, guys, have a great day. Enjoy it. Let me know what you think. Subscribe, like, comment, share, do all this stuff. Yeah? Have a great day.
Well, wow. Thank you, Alex, for organizing this. Thank you, everyone, for logging on. I've got so much information I want to share, and I've just spent the last 4 days, pretty much 18 hours a day, just creating new content. Because I'm involved with a whole lot of different conferences in the next few weeks. A big international yoga conference, which is free, and another one, which is the Australian College of Nutritional and Environmental Medicine, where I'm giving a lecture on one on heat and one on water. And water is a topic really close to my heart. So I'm happy to share, with an hour and a half, some of that content, and I think that's really great content. And what I like to do with all my presentations is go from the really big picture, fundamental basic principles, and then go into the very personal, practical things you can do. So I want to shift between that whole big picture, what's happening, and go to the very personal. Okay, so this is a graph that I found when I was 10 years old. In 1973, 1974, there's an OPEC oil crisis, and I was born in 64. So this was published in 1972 by the Club of Rome, and they called it the limits to growth. And I was a sort of precocious 10-year-old, and I saw this book, and I picked it up, and I saw this graph which said that services were going up, resource utilization was going up, pollution was going up, and the population was going up, and that couldn't keep on increasing exponentially forever, and it's all going to come crashing down. And if you look at, that's where we are now, and that's the trajectory of my life. So in 1964, you can see down here, pollution was, I was saying it's going to go up exponentially. So it's gone up to here. Services have gone right up, and I actually expect that the services per capita, the amount of things we can enjoy, like travel and ordering, consumer goods and stuff, peaked at about March this year. And I don't expect it's going to go back to that level for a long time. And who knows what's going to happen in this part of the graph, because we're in free fall. But I've been anticipating a total collapse of civilization my whole adult life, since I was 10. And my response to that was, how can I be part of this global transformation? And so we shift in two directions. And I've always thought it was possible for us to go two ways, and it's a flip of a coin, that we either destroy ourselves, or we head up to this amazing dystopian future, or we create paradise on earth. We have we turn the whole world into a health haven. And it's my belief that there's no point harping on the negative, because that way it just helps things happen. So I've put 100% of my thought processes, my energy, my career into how do we create a health haven on earth. And I want to share, because that requires every individual to create a health haven in their own environment. So I want to share that with you, but that's the big picture. So that led me to study medicine, and I studied Chinese medicine. I did physiology and psychology degrees, and a PhD in biomedical engineering, a PhD in Chinese medicine. And I've been a doctor for 30 years now, and more than half of that time as a doctor, I've been a professor at a university. So I actually spent 38 years at university getting the skills I figured I need for this transition. And I officially resigned my university position at the start of last year and figured I've now learned enough. I've got the networks. I've become a leader in the wellness industry globally. And I figured after being at university for 38 years, you take a gap year. So last year I sort of took a year off and did a whole lot of retreats and traveled the world and visited hot springs and did a bit of work, but set myself up. And this year is like the year I intended to come into the world and start working. And I feel like this whole crisis is what I was born for. And it's so depressing. I came up with a few years ago with what I call the 10 toxic truths. You can look at my blog on extremewellness.co, and there's articles about it. And that was a really depressing area to research. That was about 10 years ago when I came up with it. It's still totally relevant today, but it's pretty much how toxic the world is. And I've actually just added to that. And this is a new graph. You can see this slide here. And this was really telling when I put it together. This is what I call the 20 toxic threats. And these are all products, what I call products of death. So these are all products that we buy that directly kill us and also harm other life on Earth. And I've put the amounts there. I actually did a whole lot of research looking at how big are these industries. So our water, our food, our air, our activities, and our buildings are all full of toxic products that we spend 85% of the whole world's GDP on these products. From petrochemicals, plastic water bottles, chlorine, fluoride, fertilizers, pesticides, GMOs, you know the drill. So all of these products aren't just pollution, these are things we actually buy and pay for, and they're all controlled by 5 industries: the banks, big agribusiness, the oil industry, power industry, the media companies, and big pharma. And these industries now are controlled by a very, very small number of people. And actually this figure's wrong. It used to be less than 50 people own more than the world's poorest 50%. And I just saw a recent figure from the start of this year, and it was less than 26 people now own more than the poorest 50% of the world's population. And I just saw an article today that says that the richest people on Earth just added $282 billion to their wealth in a 3-week period during the lockdown. So there's incredible wealth inequality happening right now on Earth. Really pretty much all the money, food, energy, information, and medicines in the world are controlled by a very small handful of people, and they're selling us products that are worth $75 trillion that kill us. And not to get depressed. So the answer to that is to see that we're part of the evolution of consciousness, and that we need to let go of these products. And these industries are not evil. These individuals controlling them aren't evil, only in as much as they reflect the evil within us, because we pay for them. We like the services they give us. But if we think of them as like a booster rocket, that booster rockets are smelly, they're noisy, they leave this toxic plume, but they're necessary to get the command module out into orbit. So these industries have been necessary to get humanity to the point where we've got this globally connected world. We've all got, we can have this conversation around the world, and it can be shared everywhere. And we've needed these industries to do that. But just like a booster rocket, we need to now let go of those industries and continue on with the evolution of humanity and consciousness on a totally different infrastructure. Right now we have these 5 industries pretty much locking up the world, and a few people controlling it. But what we need to progress from is to drop these industries and then go from media to privacy and net neutrality, to go from the big banks to a collaborative economy, to go from agribusiness to regenerative agriculture, to go from the big oil industries to renewable energy, and to go from the big pharma medical industry to wellness. And that's the transition we're all part of. And we all need to be part of that globally, but the best way to do that globally is to do that within our individual lives. So that's sort of the big picture. If you're alive right now on planet Earth, you're part of this shift in global consciousness. And everything you do and say has a huge implication for the whole future of humanity. So the amount of, what you choose to share or not share, what you choose to view or not view, whether you choose to go into fear or into love, actually reverberates through so many dimensions to actually impact on whether we're at this tipping point, whether we're going to tip towards dystopia. To remove toxicity, you have to open up your channels of elimination. I call them the 5 Bs: your bladder, your bowel, your breath, your body, and your brain. That's how you eliminate toxicity, through those channels of elimination. And they relate to the 5 elements of life, or the 5 elements of what I call extreme wellness, which are water, glucose, oxygen, temperature, and carbon dioxide. So they're the 5 things you learn in basic biology that are part of the respiration or photosynthesis. These 5 elements are the language of every one of your cells. And you can consciously control them. And if you can visit the extremes of water, glucose, oxygen, temperature, and carbon dioxide, it helps you define that bliss point, that central point in the middle, which is that point of absolute balance, of homeostasis, of bliss. It's the point when we say namaste. The process of going through these 5 elements, that's the language of your cells. All your cells talk in the language of glucose, water, oxygen, temperature, and carbon dioxide. Your mitochondria relate to that. And a lot of my content I've been doing in these sort of 5 elements, and I can talk about that because part of my, my value, I think, is to make sense of life. And you can make sense of life by looking at life in terms of these 5 elements, the 5 rhythms of life, as depicted by Gabrielle Roth through the wave of flowing staccato, chaos, lyrical, and stillness. You can put so many things into these 5 systems, these 5 elements, these 5 phases of transformation. So I learned that when I studied Chinese medicine. I learned it, in Western medicine, you have the 5 humours. In martial arts, I embodied that. In 5 Rhythms dance, I embody that. And I found that a really useful structure for classifying information. But with this program, so, it's based on, filtering and flushing your bladder. So it means having the highest quality water you can have, and I can talk all day about water. So having really high quality water and flushing your body continually, and that's using herbal teas and a whole lot of products, just beverages, feasting and fasting your bowel, and you fast every night anyway, and the feast is in the first bite. So there's a lot of work on intermittent fasting that I refer to, but it's eating within a very small, or just reducing your window of where you eat, and then extending that fast, panting and holding your breath, and that goes into the hyperventilation and breath holds. And I talk about a 5-phase breathing practice, which is similar to what Wim Hof teaches, but I have a different spin on it, and I have a lot more physiology underpinning it. Doing hot and cold for your breath, for your body. So going from sauna to an ice bath, and I've still got 6 PhD students who are doing research, and one of them is doing research on saunas. We're about to publish some more research on sauna bathing, and I've just published a scientific article on the use of heat to treat COVID-19 and viral infections. I'm happy to share that article. I can give you a link. It's a free download. It's open source. It's still waiting for peer review, but it's on an open publishing platform. So I can share some of the content of that article, which discusses how heat itself has been used to treat viral infections for the last 1.5 billion years. And I actually learned, I was studying fever, and I learned that even some plants, when they get a viral infection, can increase their temperature through metabolism to actually deal with the pathogen. And certainly for the last 600 million years, fish, insects, birds, reptiles use behavior to increase their temperature when they've got a viral infection. And all mammals increase their temperature with fever when they've got a viral infection to counteract viruses. And if you look at just life on Earth, life has evolved in a very narrow temperature window, which is the temperature window where water can be liquid. And that as life has evolved, it's become more sophisticated in terms of its thermoregulatory mechanisms. So a virus doesn't have a lot of thermoregulation. It's got this lipid, certainly an RNA, like a respiratory virus, has this lipid outer coating. And at 55 degrees, just like coconut oil goes solid and then it hits a certain temperature, it just goes liquid and melts. At about 55 to 60 degrees, and other enveloped RNA viruses will just melt. They can't repair after heat stress. Yet other life forms, and certainly humans, we can tolerate temperatures much higher than a virus can. And we have really sophisticated thermoregulatory mechanisms from our physiology, from our cellular mechanisms for heat shock proteins. And the heat actually stimulates our immunity. So there's a whole lot of work you can do personally to actually use heat which is really cheap. It's really widely available to cope with the viral infections. And a lot of these practices have been used since humanity was humanity. So hot springs, since before recorded history, have always been used as places of healing. And there are many cultures that have sweat lodges and steam rooms and saunas to cope with viral infections, but also just to build up general immune resistance and general health and well-being. So I'm happy to talk about that. There's a lot, I could spend easily an hour just talking on heat as I could on water, or actually any of these topics. I could talk for days, as Alex probably knows when we do retreats. But the immune system has 3 lines of defense. And your first line of defense is your skin and your mucosal barrier. So your skin has a waterproof epidermis, and your mucous membranes, so in your nose, which is your first line of defense for respiratory viruses, has very sophisticated a mechanism for sensing. It's actually a sense organ for sensing what is the microbiome in your immediate environment. And part of that sense organ is to touch things, because to make an antibody to a new virus, you can't make it just by touching it. What you need to do is touch things in your environment and bring it to your face and touch your nose and touch your eyes, bring it to a mucous membrane. And in these mucous membranes, there are these, and this is a depiction of the mucous membrane in your nose. There's a layer of, the top layer of mucus is like sticky, and that has, it traps dust and pollen and viruses and bacteria. The layer below that is quite watery, and it allows the cilia underneath to sort of beat at 10 to 15 times per second. It sort of moves like wheat does in a wind-blown field. And that keeps that sticky layer of mucus moving at about 1 millimeter a minute. But what will happen is when there's a new virus, and there's normally viruses and bacteria there that are good, that we need, our normal microbiome, they actually help our body detect a foreign virus or a pathogen, and they bring it to these antigen presenting cells. So, a little virus, you've touched something, you brought it to your nose, or you breathed it in, it gets trapped. Those viruses or bacteria get presented to an antigen presenting cell. They actually say, oh, suss this out, make an antibody to it. And then suddenly you build up antibodies, and the mucus gets swept away, and you have a sniff or a cough, and suddenly you've got antibodies, and you were never sick. That's the pattern for 90% of people, even with SARS-CoV-2, with COVID-19, will get antibodies, and they've found antibody studies all over the world now. And they've been done in London, in Berlin, in America, where they're finding a big number of the population have antibodies and were never sick. So that's the normal process, where you want to touch things, and if you stop touching things and bringing it to your nose and bringing it to your immune system's awareness, your immune system becomes depressed. But normally in flu season, what happens is there's less sunshine, so we have less vitamin D. The mucus becomes thicker and drier because cold, dry air will make it harder for that mucus to be cleared. And if the viruses can sit longer and not be cleared away, they can then penetrate these epithelial cells. And they say it takes 3 to 5 days for the virus to grow in these epithelial cells and spread before they end up ever going to your lungs. So there's certainly an opportunity to help your first line of defense by, one, keeping that mucus nice and warm, nice and watery, so it keeps on moving, and even to kill the viruses in your nasal mucosa. And one of the key things about that, and I'm not going to go through the whole detail of the slides, is supporting the first line of defense is to avoid smoke and air pollution, because cigarette smoke and air pollution actually affect the ability of cilia to clear that viral load and the particles. And then the other one really important is to keep air warm and humid. And that's why I think in a lot of places like Bali, this has not been a bad disease, because warm, humid air maintains that good ciliary clearance, and the virus doesn't stick around. But certainly, as it comes into flu season, into winter, and Australia's coming into that, the northern hemisphere is coming out of that. It's really important, the air quality. And there are so many things you can do to maintain warm, humid air. And I'm happy to share. These are a whole lot of new slides I've just made on this. We also know that sunlight, UV light, will destroy virus within a minute or so. So getting out into the sunshine, it's really important for vitamin D, but also actually directly destroys the virus. And then you can use things like steam and essential oils to support your first line of defense. that's really important. You want to keep on touching things. So, and this whole idea of social distancing and wearing masks, I think it's much more about fear tactics and keeping people distant from each other. So they're making like, everyone's the enemy. You can't see they depersonalize people. You can't see that smile. So depersonalize you, that social distancing keeps people apart, which also suppresses your immune system. We need to be close to each other. I mean, there's so much research on social connection. I've been lecturing on that for more than 20 years. Social connection is more important as a risk factor, or social disconnection is more important as a risk factor for heart disease and stroke than smoking, cholesterol, or high blood pressure. So, keeping people apart doesn't make sense from an immunological perspective. But yeah, having warm, humid air is really vital. So there's, mind you, if the air is too warm and humid, that's a problem. So if it's too warm and humid, you get condensation, and then you get mold. If it's too dry and cool, you get dry, cold air, which you get viruses. So we live in this barrier between mold when it's high and humid, and viruses when it's cold and dry. So if it's too, and you know about this in Bali, if it's high humid air, air feels muggy and sticky and hot. You get condensation on the windows and any cold areas. You get musty odors, and that musty odors is caused by these microbial volatile organic compounds. And I call them fungi farts because they're the gaseous product of microbial digestion. So that's a fart, yeah. So that's when you get that musty odor, that means there's active mold. And these microbial volatile organic compounds have biotoxins because it's all about the microbiome that's all around us. So if you have water that stands for more than 24 to 48 hours, mold spores will germinate. And once they germinate, they start decomposing the building materials, whether it's wood or cellulose or whatever it is. And that causes more food for bacteria. And then there's this biotoxin war, this territorial war between the bacteria and the viruses to take over that territory. And we get caught in the crossfire of their biotoxins. And also that then creates more food and territory for little dust mites and other little parasites, and then cockroaches and rodents. So you have this whole ecosystem happening that's an unhealthy ecosystem when you have high humidity. So that's, you don't want to get the humidity above about 75% is too high. Even 60% is about the border, but 40 to 60 is ideal. Actually 50 is ideal, plus or minus 10. But if the air is really cold, it's hard to have humidity that's 40 even, because cold air won't hold as much moisture. And if it's really humid outside, it's really hard to get it below 70 sometimes. And that's why in places where it's really humid that mold is such a problem. There's also effects if it's too low. So if humidity is too low, you have static shocks and you get the dry air, your eyes become dry and irritated. You get this dry nose and throat, and that means the mucus isn't being cleared, so the viruses can hang around longer and actually start infecting those epithelial cells. And you get damage to, timber and paint and artwork and electronics, and your sleep is affected. Plus, you're more prone to colds and flu, and that's what people are worried about now coming into winter. That the humidity is too low, you get colds and flu. So there's 10 ways to raise household humidity. Here's a little slide on that. So one is to keep your rooms warm and reduce any leaks and stop any cold air coming in. So you want, warm air will hold more moisture. And if it's, you're in a cold environment, and it's coming cold in Melbourne now, just putting bowls of water near your heater, or a bowl of water near the windowsill where the sunlight can hit it, and that'll evaporate moisture into the air. Having plants, flowers, fish tanks, water features, fresh firewood in the house will help put humidity into the air. Drying your clothes inside, or vent your clothes dryer inside to use the moisture from your clothes to increase humidity. Cook continuously, and traditionally in wintertime, that's when you have soups and stews, things that stay on the stove for a long time, and they're pumping water into the air. And I know people who have if it's a bit cold, they just have put a pot on the stove with some eucalyptus leaves in it and have that boiling away, pumping water into the air. Mind you, you don't want to do it to the level where you have condensation on the window. So it's a balance. Boiling the kettle regularly and having cups of tea. Just the kettle boiling will pump water into the air. Air drying your dishes, leaving the shower door open when you're showering, or leaving the bath water in the bath until it cools down. Spraying things down, spraying your plants or your curtains down, having candle warmers or essential oil diffusers. All these things can help raise your household humidity and support your nasal mucosa to attract and clear any viral particles. Information. So these are 10 ways to raise your nasal air humidity. So one is staying hydrated. And I can talk about water for a long time, but the quality of your water really underpins the quality of your health and well-being. And there's a whole lecture we can do on water, but water can be a blessing or a curse. I mean, water is who we are. 99% of our molecules are water, because water's tiny and other molecules are big. So yeah, we're 2/3 water by mass or by volume, but 99% of our molecules are water. And water holds memory, it holds consciousness. So water doesn't, but it also holds toxicity and pathogens. So you want water to be filtered, you want to get rid of the toxicity out of your water. You also want water to be structured, balanced, and blessed. Then just drinking hot tea. You bring a cup of tea to your face, the steam will come out and help increase the humidity of your nose. Having a scarf around your face, around your neck, or a mask, and I much prefer a scarf than a mask because it's sort of more personal. Having your hands in front of your face when it's cold will actually increase the humidity around your nose. And anytime you feel your nose getting cold, that's the time to have a cup of tea, sniff some soup or something like that. Or if you really want, putting your face over a pot of steaming water and whacking some essential oils in there. And there are some great essential oils. I mean, traditionally, tea tree and eucalyptus, which have antiviral properties, but also mucolytic properties that break up the thick mucus and helps the mucus flow. And there's other oils that have anxiolytic properties that help just relax you and make you calm and feel good. So that's a really great home remedy. Using a neti pot, having a hot shower, that increases the humidity around your nose. So if your nose is feeling a bit cold and you're not feeling comfortable, go have a hot shower, have a hot bath, go for a swim. And my favorite is long kisses. Now, all of these things will actually raise the humidity around your nasal airways. So they're really important, first line of defense. I would suggest you don't isolate yourself as well. I mean, and one of the best ways to get other microbial information is to go into nature. And there's a lot of research now on forest bathing. That when you go out into nature and with soil, you're actually getting a whole lot of viral particles, RNA particles that you're exposed to that actually boost your immunity. So you don't have to go out mix with people, although that's actually a really good thing to mix with other people. But certainly going out into nature, getting some sunshine, stimulating your immune system with foreign DNA is important to maintain your immunity. But then what I'm saying is these are sort of I wouldn't say they're the best thing to do, but they're certainly an ancillary thing to do to support that first line of immune defense. So that's keeping the air temperature in your house, warm and humid. And if you can't do it in your house, at least around your face, warm and humid. So that's really important to protect your ability to sense the virus, make an antibody, and then clear it away. Now, if you can't do that for some reason, there are other things you can do. The second line of defense, this is again Immunology 101, is fever, inflammation, phagocytosis, using complement and IgA and interferon. So these are your body's antiviral defenses that you don't need to be learned, you're born with them. And the important one is fever. Fever actually activates both your innate and acquired immune cells. It makes the membranes on these cells more liquid so they can differentiate faster, they can respond to antigens faster, and it makes them more active and migrate faster. So fever is actually your body's way of activating your immune system. But fever actually takes quite a lot of metabolic energy. And you can outsource that energy to a hot bath or to a sauna or to a steam room or to exercise. I mean, anything that raises your body temperature by 1 to 2 degrees. So exercise will do that when you're at the point where you've exercised till you're hot and sweaty and you have to stop. Exploring your heat tolerance in a sauna or a steam room or even a hot bath. When you get to that point where you really feel that it sort of hurts good, there's a point when you're exercising, and it works the same with cold tolerance. You get to a point that I call forced mindfulness. And that's the point where you can't just think about other things and you can't just read the paper. The sensations from your body force you to just focus on your body and just breathe and be there. And that forced mindfulness is really, really powerful for getting your mind and your body on the same page. And there's so much research on mindfulness we can talk about. But what that does, when you explore that limit of your tolerance, usually you've exceeded the tolerance of a virus or a pathogen, and you've activated your immune system. And the other thing you've done is, as you build up tolerance to heat, because if you do regular heat exposure, you build up your ability to cope with heat. So if you do get sick, you can mount a quicker, faster fever to drop, to actually affect or to combat against the viral, bacterial pathogens. And it also trains your body to reduce the fever. So you're training to, your body to go into a higher temperature, but you're also training to then reduce the fever. And often that turning off of the inflammatory process is really important, because often it's the inflammatory process itself, that cytokine storm, that does all the damage. So having your immune system's ability to turn itself on and off can be trained by exploring heat and cold. And funnily, heat shock proteins are part of that process. And heat shock proteins are released in both cold conditions and in hot conditions. So exploring the limits of your heat temperature tolerance is a really powerful way to prime your immune system and make you more robust against any pathogens. So that's, yeah, just heat stress. Now, the other thing is, if you go into a sauna, probably not infrared saunas go to about 60 degrees centigrade, but certainly traditional Finnish saunas go to 100, 120 degrees centigrade. And that's way beyond the temperature that any virus can survive. Viruses 55, they'll melt and just be destroyed. So the other thing that your nasal mucosa does, not only is it a sense organ for pathogens, it's also a really important thermoregulatory organ, because your nasal mucosa, the turbinates inside your sinuses, they're a heat exchanger. So in summer, they help cool down the air, and in winter, they help warm up and humidify the air that goes into your lungs. So it means in winter, this cold air is coming into your nose, and it chills the nasal mucosa because it's trying to warm the air that goes into your lungs. So the coldest place in your body during winter, when there's cold air, is your nasal mucosa. And that's where viruses like that. They like that cold. That's where they get the advantage. So if you raise the temperature of your nasal mucosa, of the air inside your nose, you can destroy viruses where they lie in your nose. And you can do that in a sauna comfortably. Often saunas are 80, 90 degrees, or that's way beyond the temperature that needs to destroy a virus. And I'm actually working now with, it's quite challenging work, with the sauna industry, the hot spring industry, the spa industry, because pretty much all the saunas in the world right now are closed. And they're all really scared of opening up and how they're going to open up and what sort of measures do they have to bring, and disinfection and social distancing and masks and all this disaster of fear, when probably one of the safest places you can be is inside a sauna that's over 60 degrees, because the viruses won't survive there and your immune system is going to be supported. So mimicking fever with exercise, with saunaing, with hot baths, and there's a general protocol that is traditional, where you'll start to rinse off your body, you'll do heat, you do cold, then you rest. And I can't stress enough that the rest period in between going from hot and cold is just as important as the hot and cold, because you want to visit the edge of your physiology, the edge of your homeostatic range, but then you want to experience that homeostatic point in the middle. And that's the point that's blissful. That's the point where you have this deep relaxation where everything comes into balance. And it's really important to explore that point as much as it is important to explore the tolerance of your heat. And because everyone has a different heat tolerance, it makes it impossible to give a protocol that says, go to this temperature with this humidity for this amount of time, because it's not a prescription that's one size fits all. Everyone is different, and even your heat tolerance will be different at different parts of the same day or day to day. And if you do regular heat and cold, you'll find that you'll build up tolerance very, very quickly. So what you can tolerate today will be different from what you tolerate tomorrow. So rather than prescribe a temperature, humidity, and a time, what I prescribe is go to the point where you get that, where it hurts good, where you can tolerate it, it's comfortable, but it's comfortably uncomfortable. And it's the point where you feel that this is forced mindfulness. I can just be here for a moment, but if I can just be here, just breathe and be here. And you do that for 10 breaths. maybe you can do it for 30 breaths, it's up to you. But if you can do a few breaths at that point where, okay, I'm just going to be here, it's really, really hot, but if I just breathe and focus and turn my mind off, you can tolerate it. That's the point you want to get to, and you want to do it comfortably. You don't have to push past that point. In fact, if you push past that point, you'll do yourself damage. But what happens when you visit the edge of your comfort zone, just visiting the edge, exploring the edge, playing with that edge, you'll find that it naturally expands. You don't have to force it to expand. You can't push it out. It's like when you go to the edge of a yoga stretch and you're right at the point of the yoga stretch that if you go any further, you're going to hurt yourself. But if you just breathe and be there, you can just tolerate it comfortably. That's the point you want to get to with your heat tolerance. So another example is, when you pick up a hot cup, you're having a cup of tea and it's hot enough that it, your hands feel the heat, but it's not burning you. It's the point where you're lying on the beach and you're really hot and okay, I've got to get up and have a swim now because I'm that hot. So it's visiting that point within yourself that's your comfort zone, the edge of your comfort zone. So again, a really powerful technique, and that works with both hot and cold. And in fact, there is actually good research that says when you do hot and cold, they have a synergistic effects. So the positive effects of heat are even made more powerful when you alternate heat with cold. And the Finns and the Scandinavians and the Russians and the Japanese have known that for hundreds of generations, and that's part of their culture that they do that. So that's a really simple practice. Heat is available to most people. Most people have a hot bath. You can do it in the shower. It's harder to do in the shower to get yourself so hot that you're boiling. And if you do it in the shower, you've got to be careful that you're not humidifying your shower or your bathroom so much you're going to get mold, because you'll make water condense on the roof and the ceilings and the walls and the mirrors and stuff. So yeah, in the shower you can do it, but you just want to make sure it's well ventilated and you're not causing a mold problem. Certainly in a hot bath you can make yourself that hot, and in a sauna you can do that, and you can do it with exercise, but it takes a lot of metabolic energy. Whereas in a sauna or a hot bath you can just relax, and in a hot tub you can relax with friends and do that. So it's one of my favorite things to do, so I highly recommend that. A slide, and this is actually from this scientific article that I wrote, and it's the evidence for the effect of heat treatments for respiratory viruses. So there's historical evidence, and me and one of my PhD students, Joy Hussain, she's a medical doctor, she's finishing her PhD this year on saunas, and we did a clinical review or a systematic review of the clinical benefits of sauna therapy. And there's so much historical evidence that regular sauna bathing improves cardiovascular function, respiratory function, immune function. It also improves mood and quality of life and reduces deaths from all causes. So just regular saunaing is just something you can do, not just for getting rid of a respiratory virus, but it improves your heart disease, improves your Alzheimer's disease, respiratory disease, makes you feel good, and actually reduces your risk of dying from any cause. So, what a great thing to do. There's also epidemiological evidence, and this is from Jari Larkinen's group in Finland, where he followed over 2,000 men for 20 years and showed that the men who had more frequent saunas had a less chance of having pneumonia or any viral infection, viral respiratory infection. There's also a randomized controlled trial done by Edzard Ernst's group with 50 bathers, and they showed that over a 3-month period, one group had regular saunas, one didn't, and the group that had regular saunas had half the incidence of respiratory viral infections. So that's showing prevention from regular saunas. And there's another couple of clinical trials, randomized controlled trials, that showed that just by breathing hot, humidified air for 20 to 30 minutes, and that's surprising because 43 degrees is not that hot. That's well below a sauna temperature, and it's usually, that's probably below most steam room temperatures. But breathing hot, humidified air for 20 to 30 minutes reduced the viral shedding, gave immediate relief of symptoms, and improved the course of the common cold. So this is really great evidence to say that a very cheap, very widely available, very simple therapy, which is just heat treatment, can actually be really effective. And the other thing I think is really important, it's not talked about much, is that when you do these treatments, it gives you a sense of control. It gives you a sense there's something you can actually do for yourself. So you're not just at home scared waiting for the the vaccine. You're actually empowered to actually improve your own immunity. So that's a really important factor. The fact that these therapies cause forced mindfulness. They actually force you to be mindful. So it's like a physical entry point into meditation is really powerful. The fact that these things are fun to do and you can do them socially is really powerful. And then just by doing something with the expectation it has a positive outcome, you turn on the power of positive thinking, or the placebo effect, or what's called remembered wellness. So there's a really powerful psychological benefits from doing these home-based treatments where you're in power, you can feel like you can do something for your own immune system, and that there's really good evidence that they work on the physical level, on the cellular level. And we could talk about, if people want to nerd out with me, I can talk about the heat shock proteins and the cellular level and things that happen with TNF alpha and the interleukins get released during heat treatments. But just so you know that there's cellular things, physiological things, and psychological benefits from exposing yourself to heat. And most of them have been demonstrated to be more beneficial when you alternate heat with cold.
Can you share with us what we can do to help our mucuses when we're flying?
Sure, because when you fly, it's dry air and it's very desiccated and it's usually laden with viruses and recycled. And there's also and they don't talk about it much, but there's these bad air events where you get these organophosphates from the jet going into the cabin. So you get these massive toxicity events when you're flying. So the best thing to do is minimize flying. I'm not a big fan of masks because I think it just really depersonalizes people, but having a mask over your face will increase the humidity of your air. It doesn't do much for viruses, but just having that humidity. What I do, I drink lots of Tulsi tea. I can talk for hours on Tulsi. Tulsi is holy basil. It's the most revered herb in Ayurvedic medicine. You can grow it very easily in most environments. I grow it myself. These are just cuttings from my Tulsi plants, and after a week or so, they grow roots. I plant them and I give them away to all my friends. So and Tulsi is holy basil. It smells like basil, but it's got antiviral properties. It's got they call it the ultimate adaptogen, and you can get it as tea bags. I think Pukka and Organic India both have really great high quality Tulsi tea. So you take a whole lot of Tulsi tea bags with you, and you just ask the staff for hot water. And any barista place or they'll give you boiling water, or take a thermos flask yourself and just constantly be drinking Tulsi tea. And in fact, I wrote an article some years ago on first aid for travelers. One of the health websites. So if you Google Tulsi travelers first aid, there's a whole article there on how Tulsi actually helps you with traveling. And it also helps with the radiation from traveling, because Tulsi is actually, it's really good for helping with radiation exposure. And when you travel, you've got more cosmic ray exposure. So Tulsi is actually really effective on so many levels. So drinking lots of Tulsi tea, staying very well hydrated is really important. Not using alcohol, even though they might give you free drinks and stuff. So not drinking tea, coffee, or alcohol, or sugar drinks. And there's another article which is freely available. If you just Google, what's it called? Tulsi, a herb for all reasons. So that's an open access article. And I document all the benefits of Tulsi. It's a herb for all reasons. But if you look at the Western world, like these $75 trillion worth of potent these toxic products we all buy, most of the Western world runs on sugar, alcohol, and caffeine. That's the beverages that the whole world runs on. There's no hotel in the world, there's no restaurant, there's no airline in the world where you can't get sugar, alcohol, and caffeine. Yet Tulsi has the benefits of sugar. So as a society, we wake up and we have caffeine to get us going, sugar to keep us going, and then alcohol to bring us down. Yet Tulsi has all the benefits of sugar, alcohol, and caffeine without the drawbacks. So Tulsi will actually make you alert and focus without the jitteriness of caffeine. It'll balance your blood sugar, and it's really good for type 2 diabetes and gives you this balanced blood sugar control without the highs and lows of sugar drinks. And it relaxes you without the depressant effects of alcohol. And then you can mix it with all the other herbs. So, you can mix it with ginger and all your other favorite herbs. You can mix Tulsi with. So Tulsi's a fantastic thing as a traveler's best friend, I think. And then, so avoiding sugar, alcohol, caffeine, drinking lots of Tulsi, making yourself really hydrated, going for walks. And there's all the jet lag treatments of, exposing yourself to light and social activity and feeding. It's better to fast while you're flying. And then just eating when you're going to go back into the zone where you're flying to. But the food is crap anyway, and taste receptors aren't as potent on high altitude, because even though you're at altitude and it's a pressurized cabin, it's not sea level pressure, and your taste receptors aren't as active. So they tend to put much more sugar or MSG and stuff in the food, and usually it's crap processed food anyway. So take your own food, or fast while you're flying, and just use that as an excuse to drink. And then as soon as you land, take your shoes off and find some soil and literally ground yourself. And all of those things will help to transform. We can probably talk more about this. Maybe it's a whole other webinar we could do. But a great question, and hopefully that's answered some of that. Give you some, mind you, I don't know if people are going to be flying nearly as much now because all the airlines are going bust and you can't fly anywhere, so it might be a moot point. Fever is a non-specific response to any virus, and it's and you certainly don't want to be reducing fever with Panadol or Tylenol and all these antipyretic drugs, unless you're having febrile seizures or something really dramatic. Because fever is a natural process that you want to enhance and support. You don't want to reduce fever unless there's some really important cause to do that. So, and now that you're coming out of it, you might want to just explore your heat tolerance a little bit. Have a warm bath and then just cool down and just see how you feel with that. Certainly maintain, keep yourself really hydrated. Only eat when you're hungry. And I talked about feasting and fasting, and the feast is in the first bite. But so what I really recommend to do is don't eat until you're so hungry that you're visualizing. When you get really hungry, you start to visualize food, and food just pops into your head. Wait till that point, because at that point it means your digestive system is ready to absorb your meal. If you just eat because it's time to eat and you're eating on top of another thing, you've got this half-digested food you haven't even processed, and your body's got to cope with more. That takes a lot of metabolic energy, and that metabolic energy is taken away from your ability to heal yourself. Actually, and this leads me into a whole nother segue, a whole nother little lecture that I can give on the external sort of sympathetic nervous system response, which is the fight and flight response, which is activated by fear and anxiety, or the rest and digest parasympathetic nervous system response. So our body has two arms of our autonomic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system is getting you ready to run away from a tiger or fight for your life in a battle. And if you're running away from a tiger or fighting for your life in a battle, you don't want to waste any energy healing or digesting. So all the blood goes to your out surface, your brain, your eyes, because any sensation might give you the edge in a battle, or edge to run away from that tiger. So that actually actively turns off your immune system and your inflammation processes and your healing processes. So that's that's designed to direct all your energy outwards. And that's good. In a battle, you want all your energy outwards. When you're running away from a tiger, you want all your energy outwards. But you need to balance those times with when you're focusing your energy inwards. And they're the things you do when you're safe in your cave. So they're things like eating, sleeping, doing creative things with your hands, sewing and writing and knitting, making love, resting. So they're the things that are parasympathetic: rest and digest, healing, recovering, recuperating, regenerating. So you want to balance any period of hyperarousal with really intense, calm relaxation. And what's happening right now, so many people are hyper-aroused all the time because they can just be at home, safe in their cave, but they're watching the news and they're getting terrified, and that's giving this fear response. That's directly suppressing their immune system. So you really want to turn off the news, or if you're going to turn on the news, deal with it, but then have a period where you can totally relax, and that's where the forced mindfulness practices can help. Is another poem which I call the 10 hacks to relax. And I actually came up with that in Bali while I was doing the latest retreat. And for many years, I've been running these retreats, doing ice bathing and teaching people what they can do when they get into an ice bath to calm down. Because when you go into an ice bath, you have this big sympathetic nervous system response. So you go into an ice bath, you start breathing like that, and you reproduce the body chemistry and the breathing pattern of anxiety and trauma. That's naturally what happens. So you turn on that sympathetic nervous system, and actually that also turns off your immune system. So you get adrenaline and cortisol when you go into the ice bath. But if you want to relax in an ice bath, you can sort of hack your body, and you can mimic the activities you do that you're safe in your cave. And if you mimic those activities, you turn on your parasympathetic nervous system and you calm yourself down. And that's been turned by a friend of mine into a song and a little animation, but it's just touch all your fingers, wiggle your toes, soften your stomach, breathe through your nose, sigh, smile, swallow, sing, flutter your eyelids, and focus within. Now, you don't have to do them in that order, but that's just like a little memory tag of the 10 things you can do to hack your parasympathetic nervous system. And I call that emotional first aid. So these are all activities you can do to relax on demand. So anytime you're anxious, upset, scared, or in pain, like you're at the dentist and they're hurting you, you can just do these activities and touch all your fingers, wiggle your toes, soften your stomach, breathe through your nose, and it'll calm your body. It tells your body you're safe, you're okay, and it activates your parasympathetic nervous system.
Mark, I want to say something there.
Sure.
People ask me all the time, what's the point of the ice baths? And I think you're touching exactly one of the key points. For me, the secret is daily practice. Like the fact that I go every day in the ice baths and I apply everything you say, then I'm training myself to deal with this uncomfortable situation. So when it comes up in my everyday life in an unexpected way, I'm actually trained to deal with it. Yep. So it's not just a concept that, okay, it's fine, but I'm actually, okay, whoa, I know that feeling. And I can be watching the news and, whoa, I've got this, or I get someone on the phone and they're being hard on me and, oh my God, and all of a sudden I have this wave of anxiety that goes in my body. And I remember the sensation because it was exactly what happened when I was going into the ice baths. And doing this practice of rebalancing my nervous system daily, consciously, on demand, prepares me for when I'm no longer in charge, when all of a sudden there is something external that is coming into my field and I don't know how to handle it. And that's really, I feel, one of the main benefits beyond the physiological benefits is you're training yourself to become an extreme human.
Yeah. And also what that does, going to an ice bath, is it forces you to stop procrastinating. It exercises your willpower. Because the hardest thing about an ice bath is the decision to do it. Just, once you've made the decision to do it, it's like when you jump in a freezing river or a lake, it's that point of just making the decision to jump. Once you've decided to jump, then your body just knows what to do and it does it. And it's interesting because Ian Fleming wrote about this when he talked about the James Bond series. Because James Bond in the series, James Bond has a Scotch shower every morning. And a Scotch shower is a very hot shower followed by a freezing cold shower. And you can imagine the cold water in Scotland very cold.
But,
so James Bond does that every morning, and then he's practiced to be very calm and cool in these uncomfortable situations. So when there's all this craziness going on, he knows who to shoot and who to kiss and how to get away, because he's practiced being calm in these uncomfortable situations. So yeah, I can also share. There's another really practical way, because I've been sharing ice.
On the ice bath thing, just to be clear, because this is not a practice to do when you're sick. That's a practice to do when you're in good shape and you want to boost your immune system and prepare yourself. But when you are sick, that's where you need to protect your metabolism and just surrender. And there is no time anymore for this. But you can keep going with the breathing practices. So if you guys who follow me, there's this breathing technique to do this when you get sick. And all of a sudden, you can actually keep going back.
Well, it's the same with heat treatments. You don't want to go into a sauna when you've got a fever. I mean, it's in between the fever. You can support that, but not when you're actively sick. So these are things you can do to defend against illness. And you can do them acutely, but regular practice is actually the best. But the regular practice of cold showering is such a simple thing to do. It takes no extra time, doesn't cost anything really. And I've been sharing that for a long time, and people say to me, I just can't handle cold water. I'm not a cold water person. So there's another little dance and song that I've got that can help you deal with the cold shower. I call it the cold water hokey pokey. And it's just a really simple practice. So what you do is just start with a hot shower. And then once you've had your shower and you've sort of been comfortable in your hot shower, you've washed yourself, whatever, then you turn the heat up and you make yourself uncomfortably hot. So you're actually feeling a bit flushed and prickly, and even maybe starting to sweat even though you're in the shower. And then this is the hardest part. You make the decision to do it. So you then stand back, you turn off the hot water, turn on the cold water, but you just wet your left foot. And that's easy. Okay, your body's really hot. You just come out of a really hot shower, and you can put your left foot into the cold water, and that's okay. Then you put your leg in, and then your right foot, and then your right leg. And that's okay. And what that does, that pushes all that vasoconstricts the blood vessels in your leg, and it pushes the warm blood in your legs up into your core. And then you do your left hand and arm, and then your right hand and arm. And then, so that's vasoconstricted periphery. So even though your arms and legs have been in the cold water, your core is warm. And then you keep breathing calmly and you smile to yourself, because that's what it's all about. And then you do the next verse, which is put your left side in and your right side in and your front side in, and you turn yourself around. And when you're putting your left side in, rather than putting your left side under the cold water and makes you go, oh, that big breath out, you use the hacks to relax, and you take a big breath of air before you put your left side in. And as you're putting the left side under water, especially when the water hits the blood vessels around your neck, which are sensitive to temperature, you take a big sigh out. So as you go into the cold water, you go, a big sigh, and that changes everything. So you can really tolerate cold water when you're going, So you put your left side in and your right side and front side in, turn yourself around, continue breathing calmly, smile to yourself. That's what it's all about. And then you put your whole head in, and then you move your whole head around, and you stand still, just feel that drenching, and slowly turn yourself around, continue breathing calmly, smile to yourself. That's what it's all about. And then you put the cold water on your groin, your kidneys, and your armpits, which are normally where the blood vessels are. That cools down your body. And that whole process takes about 1 minute. And it's actually not traumatic. If you have really, really cold water, if you're living part of the world where it's almost freezing in the shower, just start off with your feet and then move to your arms, and you can actually build up that whole process. And you'll find that, the next day, you've already tolerated a lot more than you could, on the first day.
Would you have a few quick recommendations for bladder, bowel, and brain?
Sure. So your bladder is to filter and flush your bladder. So keeping really high levels of quality hydration, and even letting yourself get dehydrated, in a sauna or something, so you really feel what it's like to be thirsty, and you feel the benefits of satisfying your thirst with good quality water. And I can't stress enough that water is the operating system for your life. So having the highest quality water you can is really, we can talk so much about water, but it's also really important to not just filter your drinking water, but to filter your bathing water, because you actually absorb a lot of chlorine and chloramines through your lungs and your skin when you bathe. In fact, they've done studies on that, and they show that even though they make the regulations about chlorine in water based on ingestion of 2 liters of water, you actually absorb more chlorine through your lungs and your skin, because that absorbs directly in and it bypasses your liver and goes straight into your bloodstream. So upgrading your water, having Tulsi tea, and good hydration is really good for your bladder. Your bowel, we talked about feast and fast. Your body, your breath, we talked about panting and holding your breath a little bit, hot and cold. And with your brain, doing activities that put you in flow, that totally demand your whole body and mind together. So that can be, I find I do that with dancing, but it could be yoga. It could be any practice that your body and your mind are fully integrated, that you're in a flow activity, into a flow state. And then having times when you're actively doing nothing. And that's actually, doing nothing sounds like, oh yeah, what do you do in the weekend? Oh, I just did nothing. But doing nothing is actually a spiritual practice. And you might think you're doing nothing, but there's always less you can do. And trying to do as little as possible is actually really profound. And you'll find that after you do especially the breathing practice, but even after you've done the hot and cold, and when you're resting in between, you're letting yourself go to homeostasis. But also after you've done hyperventilation and a breath hold, you'll find that your physiology calms right down. And both of them, in cold water it happens, and also when you're holding your breath, your brain turns itself off, because it's a survival mechanism. Your brain normally takes 25% of your metabolism, of your energy and oxygen consumption, just to keep your brain functioning. So when you're hypoxic, because you've done a breath hold, or when you're in the cold and you want to save energy, your brain, as a survival mechanism, turns itself off. So you actually stop thinking. And you can use that to your advantage as an entry point into meditation, where you can, after you've gone into the cold and you're resting, or after you've done the breath hold and the hyperventilation, or hyperventilation then breath hold, then your pulse rate will actually drop down, and I use a little oximeter to measure my pulse, and I find that my pulse can go between 5 and 10 beats per minute below my resting pulse when I do this breathing activity. And your breath rate will slow down, your pulse rate will slow down, your mental activity will slow down, and it's just, you just lie there and be, so you're actively doing nothing. And that's a really powerful thing for getting your whole body into that bliss point, into that homeostasis. And there's a saying in Eastern medicine, but also in martial arts, and also in gymnastics and juggling, that the greatest movement comes from the stillest point. And so if you can keep that still point within you really profoundly still, that gives you the most leverage for doing activities. And that happens with juggling or martial arts. If you can keep the dantian just below your navel, which is your physical center of gravity, if you can keep that still, then you can do somersaults or rotate or kick or punch or have this movement, because you've got this axis for the movement. So that's also psychologically, if you can maintain a psychological still point, which is in deep meditation, and that's what I call the deep inner well of your being. If you can access that deep inner well of your being, that gives you the greatest ability to go in that direction or this direction and cope with whatever stresses the world throws at you. So actively doing nothing is, it sounds frivolous, but it's actually really quite profound. And the more you can explore how you can find your still point, that center of your balance, that bliss point, for all your health and well-being, that will just support everything else you do.
And I think you could go on for another 5
easily.
I know that. So guys, we're about 8 minutes to end. So I just want to stress and start by thanking you, Marc, for taking the time and sharing so much wealth of knowledge. What I feel is that it's almost overwhelming. I mean, there's so much going on. There is so much that needs to be done that. So that's why discussing with you and doing the previous webinars, we decided to actually do a week-long online retreat so that people get to actually learn step by step how to create a healthy routine. We're learning so many useless things in our lives. We don't really actually spend time to actually acquire ways to hack ourselves, to connect with ourselves in a way that we can actually live the life we want to live and do everything we want, get past the conditioning. So I love your teaching. And I think that for those who will want to join, I've already shared the link. We're going to spend a week going deeper, but also focusing on you, on what's going on. And again, the absolutely key is to build a healthy routine. So not only learning the science behind it, but applying it, sharing it, doing it.
Also doing the practices and then sharing the practices and your experience from the practices. So and one of the things I'm creating now is the Extreme Wellness Academy. I'm working with the hot spring industry and the sauna industry to teach people how to coach people through these experiences, because it's actually quite difficult to do it by yourself. So it really does, help to have someone to coach you through the experiences, and we can do that online now. But to have feedback on, am I doing it right? This is what came up for me. Is this dangerous? What are the contraindications? How do I manage this process? So, you can't do that in a 1-hour lecture. So the retreat is designed to talk about the theory, have the experience, and we can help you create hot and cold experiences at home and the breathing practices at home, and then come back and share those experiences so you get feedback and get positive reinforcement on what actually works for you. And as we finish, I just want to stress that these physical practices are great, but I think that the most powerful practice is your mental attitude and maintaining that positivity. And there is a lot of fear going on right now. I actually am really excited. I think we're moving into a phase where the whole world is going to become a health haven. And can you imagine if we stop? I'm out to create a wellness pandemic. Because wellness practices like that we're talking about, they're cheap, they're easy, they're available to anybody. And if we can share them and do them, experience them, and we share them with our community, they can go viral and literally create a heaven on earth. And imagine if we suddenly had $75 trillion a year to spend on wellness practices rather than things that kill us. And I think we're moving from this bizarre period of human history where we've been in the booster rocket phase, which is smelly and noisy and polluting, and we're spending $75 trillion a year on stuff that kills us, to a phase of humanity where the whole world is going to be paradise, and we're going to actually focus all that energy and resource into health and well-being. So I want to move everybody across to these practices. And that's why, I actually wrote the textbook on herbs and supplements. Four volumes of textbook. This is my book, but I don't talk about herbs and supplements because they're not available for everyone. You can't get, health through a pill. I'd much rather talk about activities you can do at home for free, just with your breath and with a hot kettle or a tap, or making how to make a home sauna, how to make a home hot tub, how to make a home heated hammock, and we can share some of those in the retreat. So I'm really excited to share this stuff. The only product I have at the moment, I've got a children's book, which is amazing. It's just about to come out in 14 languages. It's an amazing spiritual story and how you can, in any situation, you can actually see it for your benefit. And water filters, because I think the most powerful thing I can do for people's health is actually give them quality water. And there weren't water filters around that did what I wanted them to do. So I've actually created them. But all the other things I promote, and even with water filtration, I can teach you how to filter water at home with not much money. It's a bit more work, but how you can do these things. So yeah, I think it's really important that we all take on a really positive attitude, that we're actually, what do they call it? The point zero for the wellness pandemic. We're all our own center of, that wellness pandemic spreading throughout the world. And the more we can do that with ourselves, the more we can actually transform that whole world, and that ripple effect is going to be global. We're moving into paradise, and we can all be agents of paradise. So thanks for the opportunity and everyone's attention.
Marc, that was really awesome. I want to leave everyone with some homework. So really what I'd love for you to do is to just take 5 minutes after this call, before you continue with anything you got to do, and just close your eyes and just think of someone that needs love right now, needs some support, and just stay with that emotion, stay with that vibration of just projecting deep, intense love to someone that needs it. And you don't even need to reach out to them in any other way than energetically. Just connect with them and just say, hey, you know what? This is what I have. And whenever you're going to be interacting from now on, please, this is what the world needs. We need you to spread this positive, loving, caring vibration, because that's how we're going to heal the world. So that's how we're going to change the story, change the narrative. So it's not about educating, not about lecturing, it's not about convincing anyone. It's just about you radiating this positive vibration. That is what that the world needs. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Marc. I'll be sharing the recording with everyone. I'll be also sending you all the links so you can. I've done that while you were speaking, but I'll do that again in a follow-up email.
You're a talented man, Alex.
All right, and I hope that some of you will be crazy enough to join us too for a week-long extreme training end of June. All right, guys.
And there is this Ayurveda Yoga conference for free, the 3rd International Ayurveda Yoga Conference. I'll be speaking on water at that event. I'm doing a lot of other sort of global conferences. There's an Australian College of Nutritional and Environmental Medicine conference, which is more for practitioners. I think there's a cost associated with that one. But there's, I've got so much content I'm trying to get out there. And I'm just really happy that Alex and these other people are giving me a platform. So thank you, Alex, and look forward to seeing you guys at the retreat or at another event.